Hey guys, welcome back to the College Predictor. We are filming live from Fraternity Row in Mississippi State University. We're about 10 minutes away from the stadium where the Egg Bowl between Ole Miss and Mississippi State will be played. It should be a great game. It will not be raining unlike last year, and I'm hoping Mississippi State get upset. Let's start off with shout-outs. LSU's Jalen Daniels, and their win against Georgia State 56-14. He threw for 413 yards, 6 touchdowns, to no picks. And yes, I know it was against a school that's not very good, but if you throw 6 touchdowns to no picks, you deserve a shout-out. And that really helped his Heisman case. It was a Heisman game for him, and I think that could be a big momentum swing for the rivalry game this week. Our next shout-out is TCU's Jared Wiley, the tight end. He went for 178 yards and 2 touchdowns as a tight end, which is hard to do as a tight end, more of a wide receiver. So that's very impressive of him, and I'm expecting him to finish the year strong. Alright, let's go to our first game, which is between the University of Wisconsin at the road against the Gophers of Minnesota. This is for Paul Bunyan's Axe, a very prestigious trophy, because this is the only real rivalry between these teams and the only rivalry each of these teams have. Wisconsin is 6-5. They're already bowl eligible. Minnesota, on the other hand, is only 5-6. So they're fighting for bowl eligibility, and it won't be easy against this Wisconsin team. Wisconsin's going to rely on the run game a lot. I think Tanner Mordecai is good at the option, but they have the superstar running back in Braylon Allen. I expect him to be a difference maker in this game. He'll slow the game down. He'll make long drives. He'll take up time when they're on offense. Minnesota, on the other hand, I think they have to be more explosive. Against Wisconsin, you have nothing to lose. It is a rivalry game. Take some shots. Catch them lacking. Wisconsin is the better team in this game. Therefore, they're 3-point favorites. Although it is tough to beat Minnesota at home. And since it's a bowl eligibility game, it's a rivalry game, give me Minnesota by 6 in the upset win. Alright, let's go to our next game. Friday game. Tulane taking on the Roadrunners of UTSA. I expect this game, because it's a rivalry, to be very important, especially in the race for Conference USA. Both these teams are undefeated in conference play and are fighting to make the conference championship. With the win, Tulane clinches. With the win, UTSA clinches. They're both 7-0 in conference play. Tulane's ranked 23rd. This is a big-time game in conference of American athletics. Tulane is the better team. They have the better quarterback, which is saying a lot because Frank Harris has been playing good recently. Michael Pratt just broke the record for most passing yards in Tulane history, so that's huge for Tulane if they want to get momentum going into this game. It is at home. It's a Friday game. It's going to be early. I feel like UTSA might be sleepwalking a little, and Tulane never sleepwalks. Tulane has been looking good the last 2 years in any big game they've played. We've seen that from USC when they played UCF. Tulane is very capable of winning these big games. And because of this game, it's going to be important for who wins and who loses, because the loser will probably not make the conference championship, supposing that SMU takes care of business. Tulane is a 3.5-point favorite. I'll also be at this game. Give me Tulane by a field goal. Tulane by 3. Let's go to our next game, which is a rivalry game in the Pac-12. The Oregon State Beavers against the 6th-ranked Oregon Ducks. Both these teams have been looking amazing this year. So I think this should be an incredible game, 16-6. Now, I do have some questions about the committee, deciding A, why is Florida State 5, and B, why do you drop Oregon State by 5 spots after losing to the 4th-ranked team in the nation when you only dropped Tennessee 3 spots in the last 2 weeks when they've got absolutely obliterated by their opponents? For me, that doesn't really make sense. I think it's unfair for Oregon State. So Oregon State's going to use that as motivation because they can still make a New Year's Six Bowl. Very possible. This game is also huge for the Pac-12. Washington is already in the conference championship. They definitely will if they beat Washington State. Oregon, if they win, they're in the conference championship. But if they lose, it comes down to Arizona beating Arizona State. If Arizona wins and Oregon loses, Arizona's in the conference championship. Knowing that, Oregon has to take this game incredibly seriously. Bo Nix has been popping off recently in his last game, where he threw 6 touchdowns in the first half. Unbelievable. In their win against Arizona State. If you look at Oregon's resume, they have not won any big games. Their best win was against Utah, and they're not ranked anymore. So Oregon's eye test is what's keeping them high in the rankings, and their only loss was to Washington, which is huge. Oregon State has DJ Uiagalelei, who's pulled off some pretty impressive plays this year, and he's going to have to pull off a lot of them if they want to beat Oregon at Autzen Stadium. Oregon's a 14.5-point favorite. Give me the Ducks to win big. Give me the Ducks by 20. All right. Next game. This is by far the biggest rivalry game of all time. UMass at UConn. Now, I think this game should be incredible. Both these teams are absolutely amazing. I'm joking. Both these teams aren't good. However, this is a rivalry game for the independents. UConn, last year, they made a bowl game. We've never seen that happen before. And this is impressive for me to say. At least both of these teams have won games this year. That's good. UMass is an underdog. UMass is at home. UConn's a 1.5-point favorite, even though UMass has the better record at 3-8. These teams have nothing to play for. I think this game should just be funny. This game could probably end 2-0 if it wanted to. I'm taking the Huskies to win by, I'm going to say 5. I think this game's going to be weird. Next game, this is huge for Louisville. They're already in the conference championship. They're still playoff eligible, but they have to take care of Kentucky at home. Louisville conference champions bid. Have had an amazing year already, and I think as of now they're probably favorites over Florida State after losing Jordan Travis. Louisville's been looking good all year. Their run game has been amazing. They've been making big games in the passing game when they've had to. And Kentucky has just looked really lackluster all year. I mean, there was all the talk about Devin Leary being the new superstar quarterback for Kentucky. People were talking that he's better than Will Levis. He only has Kentucky at a 6-5 record. Kentucky, after the last few years, this is not where they want to be. Kentucky, against the number 10 team in the nation, have to run the ball with Ray Davis. He's their strength. He's their number 1 player. If they can slow the game down, run it, they may have a chance on the road. Louisville at home, that's been tough to beat. They've pretty much been undefeated at home. And Kentucky has not been doing good on the road. I'm going to say Louisville in this game is a far better team, a far better eye test, have a far better resume. Louisville 7.5-point favorites. I don't think this will be close. Give me the Cardinal by 14. Next game is the Iron Bowl. Auburn at home versus Alabama. Now this game feels like it should be lopsided, but the last time the Crimson Tide came into Auburn Stadium, it went into 4 overtimes, and John Mechie ended the dreams of the upset. This year, Alabama is very good, but they're kind of in that roadblock. They're seeing that one loss with Louisville, Oregon, and Texas. Those 4 teams are the one-loss teams still in the playoff race. And Alabama's been sitting at 8th in the rankings since week 9. And the reason for that is Oregon's eye test in the loss to Texas. If they had beat Texas on that head-to-head game, they would probably be number 1 in the nation right now. However, that one loss kind of has them in a roadblock, because as long as Texas just keeps winning, they're not going to go anywhere, unless Oregon loses, which I don't see them losing anytime soon. So Bama, they're in a roadblock. They need either Oregon to lose to Washington in the conference championship if they make it, Texas to lose in the conference championship, or Georgia to lose in the conference championship to get any hope of the playoffs. Although they still have a pretty good chance if some things go their way. Auburn has not been looking good in the pass game all year. They could have beaten Georgia, but they couldn't pass the ball when they had to. Excuse me. Running the ball has been impressive for them. That's been kind of their signature all year, and they're going to have to run the ball very good in order to win this game against the Crimson Tide. Auburn is a 14-point underdog, and It would be cool to see Auburn upset because it would help Florida State's playoff chances. I don't see it happening. Give me the Alabama Crimson Tide by 21. Next game is a huge rivalry in the ACC. It won't matter for the conference title race, but it will matter for bragging rights. North Carolina versus North Carolina State. After the new rankings, North Carolina State has jumped all the way to 22. Meanwhile, North Carolina isn't ranked anymore. They both have the same record. They're both very similar teams. They both pass the ball good, both run the ball solid. This game's going to come down to special teams. Who's going to make field goals? Who's going to have better punts? Who's not going to make mistakes? This game, it could very well go to overtime like it did last year, where it was special teams that cost Carolina the game, North Carolina. North Carolina State, even though they're at home, they're higher ranked, they are underdogs in this game, which I don't see, but I do, because North Carolina, after a couple losses, they move them down out of the rankings. They're still sitting at 8-3, and again for North Carolina, Clemson's a roadblock for them. Clemson has a worse record, but in the head-to-head matchup, they beat North Carolina. So that is not looking good for North Carolina right now. They kind of blew their New Year's Six hopes, which they were very likely at the beginning. In fact, they were playoff contenders. Drake May, this is most likely his last game if he chooses to sit out of the bowl game, which he very well might if it isn't a good one. So he's going to have a lot to play for in this game. Meanwhile, NC State, they're just playing because they could still make a Power 5. New Year's Six bowl game as a Power 5 team. Only one non-Power 5 team makes it to a New Year's Six game most of the time. So North Carolina State has a wide open door if some teams ahead of them lose. I still think North Carolina is the far better team in this game, even regard the rankings and all. So I'm going to say Drake May has a huge game in this one. North Carolina State battles on defense, but they cannot pull it off. Give me North Carolina as a three-point favorite to win this game by 7. This next game does not seem like it would be a rivalry game worth picking, but word on the street is Shedeur Sanders might be back. Colorado at Utah. We talked about Oregon's eye test, not their resume. Utah was their best win. They were sitting at 22 last week, I believe. This week they're not ranked whatsoever. Utah's sitting at 7-4. Colorado's sitting at 4-7. This game does not feel like it should be good, but most of Colorado's losses have came without Shedeur Sanders. Dion says it's been a day-to-day process for him, and he could play against Utah, which would be huge because they would have the quarterback advantage, the wide receiver advantage, and probably the defensive advantage too. If you look at Utah on paper, they're not a very talented team. Bryson Barnes has thrown like 9 interceptions compared to 12 or 14 touchdowns, which does not look good for Utah compared to their standards of being Rose Bowl eligible. Colorado, after all the hype, 3-0, beating TCU, they just fell apart completely. Their only other win besides Colorado, Nebraska, and Colorado State is Arizona State, who, as we know, are having a terrible season. Utah, they beat USC. That's probably their number one win because they have not been able to win the big games, just like Penn State, which conveniently they played in the Rose Bowl last year. Colorado, I expect them to battle in this game for at least one half, but I just don't see them pulling off the upset against Utah at home. Colorado, Travis Hunter, Xavier Weaver, they're 23.5-point underdogs. I don't think it will be that much of a blowout. I'm taking Utah by 17. Next game is between the Mississippi State Bulldogs at home against the Ole Miss Rebels. Now, I went to this game last year. It was rainy, it was cold, and it was Mike Leach's last game as a football coach. Mississippi State won that game by 2 because Ole Miss had the worst 2-point call I've ever seen. This year, this game's a lot more lopsided. Mississippi State's currently sitting at 5-6. Meanwhile, Ole Miss is currently the number 12 team in the nation, sitting at 9-2. Their 2 losses were to the number 1 and number 8 team in the nation. So the eye test and the resume is on Ole Miss's favor. on paper, this game is all Ole Miss. They have the better running back in Quishon Jenkins, the better quarterback in Jackson Dart, the better wide receivers in Trey Harris for the number one, the better defense. This is expected to be a lopsided game. However, it is a rivalry. It is the Egg Bowl. It is in Starksville. Mississippi State could battle. Will Rogers, he needs to have a good game. Their quarterback has not been consistent all year. If he can stay consistent, if he could not force those tight windows, Mississippi State has a chance to win this game. And I sure hope they do. If they win, it will be a 100% field rush. I'm going to this game. I want to rush the field. Ole Miss, however, is about to be my biggest enemy, as they are 10-point favorites. And as much as I would love the Rebels to lose this game, I just don't know if it's possible to pick against them. I'm taking Ole Miss to win this game by 7. 2 more games left. We have the University of Clemson at the University of South Carolina. If we recall the game that this was last year, this was an amazing game. The kick return and punt return team from Clemson cost them this game, and they had the lead for a long time. Now, compared to South Carolina's record, I don't necessarily agree with their record compared to how they've played. As of now, they're sitting at 5-6. They're almost not going to make a bowl game. But if you look at the talent on their team, it doesn't make sense. Xavier Legette and Juice Wells are their number 1 and 2 receivers. You have to do better with that. Spencer Rattler's your quarterback. You cannot be a 5-win team with Spencer Rattler. And their defense has been playing solid most of the year. Except when it comes to big moments, Spencer Rattler tends to throw interceptions. At home, it should be an electric atmosphere. Clemson with Will Shipley, with Cade Klubnik, with Jeremiah Trotter, with Barrett Carter. On talent-wise, they're 100% better. If we talk about rivalry games, this is a very important battle for the Palamo State. I think Clemson on the road, I don't want them to win, but they're going to win by 10 as 7.5-point favorites. And our last game, the biggest game of the entire year, will probably decide the playoffs. The Ohio State Buckeyes at the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan, they have not looked as good as Ohio State. I mean, this game is in Ann Arbor, though, and last time this game was in Ann Arbor, Michigan won, I believe, 42-21. Last year, Michigan's running game, their running game, won them against Ohio State. And the scary part for Ohio State, they had the same 2 running backs. In that game, Blake Corum didn't play. It was Donovan Edwards, who's their backup. Donovan Edwards is still there, and Blake Corum is going to play. If you're looking at Ohio State's defense after that, it is quite concerning because the linebackers they did that again is the same linebackers that are going to be in this game as well. So on paper, the run game for Michigan is going to be a deciding factor, and Ohio State's pass game is going to be important too. Marvin Harrison against Sanders Drill. That's going to be the number 1 wide receiver versus DB battle we've seen all year. On the other hand, you have Emeka Egbuka, Cade Stover, Travion Henderson. You have all types of weapons for Kyle McCord. Michigan's wide receiver, Roman Wilson, he got a little banged up in his last game. Michigan's defense will have to step up in the passing game, but that's the problem playing Ohio State. Their offense is so two-dimensional. They could run the ball, they could pass the ball, they could run options. Ohio State has the hardest defense to guard in the league. However, Michigan, they have the best run game, as against Penn State, they had 32 plays in the second half. 2 of them were QB kneels, 30 of them were runs. Michigan's going to try to slow the game down. Both of these teams are 11-0. The loser probably won't make the playoff, assuming Georgia, Florida State, and Washington win their conference title games. This is a huge game, as it has been the last 2 years. Michigan at home, 3.5-point favorite. Give me the Buckeyes to win this game by a field goal in the last second. I think it's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., the difference maker. I expect him to make a big play. I'm going to say 37 yards with a minute left to help them get that game-winning field goal. Thank you for watching this video. It was a little busier than normal with the rivalry games and the rivalry weekend. If you enjoyed it, stay tuned. I'll be filming from 3 more games, including the Egg Bowl, UTSA versus Tulane, and A&M versus LSU. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to stay tuned. I'll be posting more content for the bowl games as well. But until then, I'll see you later.